The text came through while I was finalizing a threat report for a federal cybersecurity audit. My name's Logan Pierce. I'm 39, and I design fraud detection systems for defense contracts out of Seattle. At that exact moment, I was debugging a payment anomaly tracker for a veteran relief fund when my phone vibrated twice on the desk, but glanced down, expecting a client update. What I saw instead felt like a gut punch, delivered in 2 lines. I'm done pretending. I've found someone who actually makes me feel alive. I've moved the retirement funds. You can have the house. I stared at the screen. The words didn't sting so much as confuse me. I hadn't seen it coming, not like this. Lena was supposed to be in Denver, attending a clean water advocacy summit. 3 days, she'd said. Low profile, but important. Now she was telling me she'd drained our life savings and walked out like it was a business transaction. I reached slowly for my coffee, hands steady. If she thought she was catching me off guard, she didn't know me as well as she thought. I opened the admin dashboard for Sentinel, the fraud detection AI I'd been refining over the last 5 years, first as a side project, then as a necessity. It watched everything: banking patterns, login behaviors, transfer anomalies. The moment she initiated those withdrawals, Sentinel would have lit up like a Christmas tree. Sure enough, the alerts were already logged. $184,200, 0 cents, attempted transfer from our retirement portfolio into a private out-of-state account, flagged, blocked, frozen, all within 90 seconds. I didn't text back immediately. I didn't rage. I didn't call. Instead, I pulled up the log history, scrolled through the authorization timestamps, and confirmed what I already suspected. Lena had tried to reroute the funds using an old dual access account, one she thought I'd forgotten about. Sentinel had. Another alert popped in, her second attempt, this time using a spoofed login location, also blocked. I typed back only 7 words. I hope he makes you happier. Goodbye. Then I muted the conversation, closed the alert window, and returned to work. Someone else's security needed my attention now. Lena's financial escape plan had failed, and she had no idea just how much trouble she'd triggered. Lena and I met during a disaster relief fundraiser when we were both 25. She was organizing volunteers. I was fixing the donor site that kept crashing. Even then, our differences were obvious. She was magnetic, all charisma and instinct. I was methodical, numbers first, a guy who double-checked flight itineraries and scanned every Wi-Fi network for vulnerabilities before connecting. How it worked. Maybe we were just young enough to believe opposites balanced each other out, instead of eventually pulling apart. We got married 2 years later, bought a fixer-upper just outside Seattle with the idea we'd remodel it together, but it was mostly me holding drywall while she planned networking events. Lena's career took off fast. She became a grants manager at North Sound Earth Fund, a regional nonprofit that handled millions in environmental funding. I was proud of her. She had this effortless ability to make people listen. "You worry too much," she'd always say, when I triple-checked our tax returns or monitored our investment dashboards. "You build walls before anyone tries to break in." But that's the thing. People eventually try. Looking back, the signs were all there. 6 months ago, she stopped asking questions about our Roth IRA or our mutual funds. That wasn't like her. Lena always liked knowing what we could leverage if an opportunity came up. Then there were the new travel cards, the sudden upgrades, nicer luggage, boutique hotels, unlogged expenses. "It's comped," she'd shrug when I asked, but I'd seen enough grant reporting dashboards to know nothing. And then there was the Denver trip. She booked it last minute. "Short notice," she said. "Water Infrastructure Summit." She sounded excited but rehearsed. I remember asking her at dinner, "What's the goal of the summit?" And she just said, "Just networking. Big donors." No eye contact. That was 2 nights ago. The last conversation we had face to face, she laughed when I mentioned our latest Sentinel upgrade. "Do you ever turn that thing off?" she joked, sipping red wine. "Only when I sleep," I said. She smirked. "Then maybe I need to move faster." I thought she meant it playfully. Now I realize she already had the plan in motion. She wasn't just walking out of a marriage. She was trying to walk off with everything we'd built. And if it weren't for Sentinel, she might have gotten away with it. By the time Lena's plane touched down, wherever she'd really gone, Sentinel had already compiled a full audit log. Every keystroke, every login, every transfer attempt was there, time-stamped and indexed. I didn't even need to search. The flagged entries had climbed to the top of my dashboard like smoke rising in a sealed room. The first transaction, $184,200.00, routed from our primary retirement account to an unfamiliar bank in Arizona using a device that hadn't been associated with her in over a year. That alone would have raised alarms. But she didn't stop there. The second attempt had come just 42 minutes later. This time she tried to authorize a second transfer, $72,000.00 from our brokerage account, using a VPN to mask her location. Unfortunately for her, Sentinel had machine learning modules trained to recognize spoofed IPB behavior. The system recognized the IP prior sessions and flagged it again. Frozen, logged, isolated. What struck me wasn't just how reckless she'd been, it was how confident. She must have thought I'd left Sentinel running for work only, that I wouldn't notice a few $100,000 missing until she was long gone. But the entire system operated independently, scanning for anomalies across both professional and personal accounts. I'd built it that way after a Pentagon consultant taught me a lesson in redundancy. Don't build a system that works, build one that assumes you'll be too distracted when it matters most. And it had mattered. I ran a transaction trace. The recipient bank account was newly opened under a corporate alias, Green Shore Advocacy, LL Shell, likely. The address listed was fake, a UPS mailbox in Tempe. But what disturbed me most wasn't the paper trail. It was the fact that Lena had known the system. She'd seen me build it. She'd sat beside me on the couch as I explained anomaly pattern detection. She even named the second version Sentinel-1, like it was some sci-fi pet. And yet she still tried. There was a kind of cold relief in watching the system work. Not joy, not vengeance, just confirmation that the safeguards I'd built for strangers had also saved me. I closed the dashboard and opened our cloud storage account. She deleted most of our shared files, photos, travel plans, copies of wills, but she hadn't touched the audit logs. Maybe she didn't think I'd need them. She was wrong about that too. Earth thought it was just about us, about a marriage falling apart, a betrayal contained within the walls of our home. But 3 days after the block transfers, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. Area code 206, Seattle. It was Rebecca Lynn, head of compliance at North Sound Earth Fund, Lena's employer. She didn't waste time with pleasantries. "Mr. Pierce, I'm calling because your wife's expense accounts have triggered our internal audit system. There are irregularities we need to discuss." I leaned back in my chair, heart sinking. What kind of irregularities? Funds redirected from grant allocations to unaffiliated organizations, shell entities, some of the routing numbers match transfers that were flagged for suspicious activity by federal monitors. We believe one of the flagged transactions may have originated from your shared household accounts. In that moment, the walls widened. This wasn't just a personal escape attempt. Lena had built something calculated, scalable, and far more dangerous. I pulled up Sentinel again, this time opening the metadata around the blocked transfer to Greenshore Advocacy LLC. Sure enough, the IP address matched an earlier logging tied to a corporate laptop. My stomach twisted. I asked Rebecca for a name. She gave me one, Derek Niles, North Sound's financial director. Internal suspicions suggested he'd signed off on multiple misappropriations, but Lena had coordinated the flow. She handled the books, tracked the false nonprofit donations, and even helped funnel property inquiries through a third-party broker. That's when it hit me. Our house. I opened my voicemail and played back a message I hadn't fully processed earlier in the week from a real estate agent I'd never contacted, inquiring whether I'd accept a quick offer for the house. All cash, no inspections. The amount, $325,000, 0 cents. It was insulting. We bought it 5 years ago for that. Now it was worth at least $510,000, 0 cents. I did a quick check on the buyer name. A corporate trust, registered 3 weeks ago. Same address list as Greenshore Advocacy. Lena hadn't just planned to leave me. She and Derek were trying to flip our house under a fake buyer, launder the equity, and fold it into their network of false nonprofits. I stared at the screen, watching it all connect. It wasn't a love affair, it was a heist. And the worst part, she thought I'd never notice. The legal storm hit fast and loud. Lena filed for divorce through her attorney, Gretchen Vaughn, the same woman who once toasted us at a fundraiser dinner. The filing came with an emergency motion, access to marital assets, namely the frozen retirement accounts. The motion alleged I'd used advanced cybersecurity methods to illegally restrict her financial autonomy. I almost laughed, the irony of being accused of sabotage by the person whose fraud had triggered financial red. My own attorney, Eric Jennings, former JAG officer turned private litigator, reviewed the complaint and snorted. They're going to try and paint you as an obsessed tech freak who weaponized code to trap your wife. He flipped through my system documentation. Luckily, you logged everything, automated triggers, third-party alerts, federal flags. Lena didn't even touch a line of your code. That system built itself once it saw the pattern. We walked into King County Family Court on a rainy Friday. Lena sat at the petitioner's table, calm, professional, dressed in muted gray slacks and a blazer she used to wear on donor trips. She didn't look at me once. Gretchen led with emotional language. My client has been denied access to basic funds. She's stranded, unsupported, unable to continue her work. But Eric countered with the digital trail. Screenshots, logs, time-stamped fraud alerts. The judge, a man named Justice Merriman, read through the flagged transactions with furrowed brows. These funds weren't frozen by the respondent. They were frozen by automated federal compliance protocols, he said, tapping the affidavit from the bank's fraud division. The triggering factors were consistent with systemic misappropriation. I see no evidence of malicious interference. He ruled that Lena had access to the untouched joint checking account, $3,100, 0 cents. That would suffice for reasonable living expenses while the investigation proceeded. Gretchen objected. The judge waved it off. That's more than sufficient, given the circumstance. As Lena stood, finally facing me for the first time in weeks, she whispered, just loud enough, "You think this is over?" I met her gaze. I said, "I think this is the beginning." Because if she thought that courtroom was the worst of it, she hadn't seen what was coming next. The knock on my office door came just after lunch on a Wednesday. 2 agents, crisp suits, clipped tones, Monica Farrow from the Office of Financial Integrity, and her colleague, Agent Rafi Delgado, introduced themselves with federal credentials and purposeful eyes. Mr. Pierce, we'd like to speak with you about your wife's involvement in a growing embezzlement investigation connected to North Sound Earth Fund. Monica nodded toward a folder thick with reports. Your fraud detection system may have uncovered something much larger than you realize. I led them to the conference room. For the next hour, I walked them through Sentinel's backend, how the system monitored joint account activity, flagged behavioral anomalies, and tracked unauthorized access using machine learning. I showed them the alerts, IP logs, attempted spoofing patterns. Monica's expression didn't change much, but Rafi leaned in, visibly impressed. This is more robust than anything we've seen from internal nonprofit security, he muttered. You sure you built this alone? I just nodded. Quiet systems are my specialty. Monica finally broke the silence. The forensic team found that Greenshore Advocacy and 3 other shell organizations received redirected grant funds totaling over $1,700,000, 0 cents. Your wife's name is on every disbursement authorization. They suspected a coordinated financial laundering ring involving at least 2 executives, Lena and Derek Niles. The money had been passed through fake environmental projects, laundered through property flips, including attempted purchases, like my own home, and funneled into personal accounts registered to trusts. And they asked if I'd be willing to formally assist with documentation. I agreed, of course. I'd already written the code that caught them. Now it would help indict them. By Friday, subpoenas were issued. My logs were entered into evidence. I provided every email exchange Lena had deleted from our cloud backups, but failed to erase from the system cache. Within 72 hours, federal agents executed a search warrant on Lena's apartment and Derek's office. They found printed blueprints of the laundering scheme, flowcharts, lists of target properties, donor info, and one particularly damning spreadsheet. It wasn't just about stealing money. It was about erasing people, marriages, homes, grants, reputations. They had done this before. Monica returned later that week with a simple summary. Your logs gave us the anchor. We're expanding the case to include conspiracy, fraud, and organized financial crime across 3 states. Your cooperation will be crucial. I gave her a quiet nod. This wasn't just a personal betrayal anymore. It was a takedown. The trial didn't take long. With the evidence so meticulously organized, from Sentinel's log trails to the subpoenaed emails and property transactions, Lena's attorney pivoted from denial to damage control within days. She accepted a plea bargain, 11 years in federal prison, with a possibility of parole in 6. Derek Niles, who tried to maintain innocence until the last possible moment, flipped when shown recorded calls between him and Lena discussing contingency exit strategies and property extractions. He took a 9-year sentence for cooperation and testified against 2 other executives. I was called to the stand twice. The first time to walk the jury through Sentinel's design, how it triggered alerts automatically without bias, and how it caught Lena's initial transfers within seconds. The second time was personal. The prosecutor asked when I stopped trusting my wife. The moment the system caught her trying to move our retirement without consent, I said simply, trust ended when the math didn't lie. Lena sat across the courtroom, thinner than I remembered, in a beige suit borrowed from federal custody. She didn't cry. She didn't speak. Her expression hovered somewhere between numbness and disbelief, like she still couldn't process how her escape plan became a federal conviction. After the sentencing, the judge turned to me and said, "Pierce, your systems not only protected your personal assets, they helped uncover a crime that would have devastated dozens of families and nonprofits. Your vigilance matters." I didn't feel proud, just relieved. The court returned full ownership of the house to me. The retirement accounts were unfrozen and restored. Lena waived any rights to shared assets as part of her plea. The house, once a shared symbol of our life, now felt like just a structure, a reminder. I sold it a month later for $512,000. No yard, no guest room, no shadows. The release wasn't triumphant. It was clean. I didn't gloat. I didn't rage. I signed final divorce papers, handed over every document the federal investigators requested, and closed that chapter. She texted once more before prison intake. "I didn't think it would end like this." My reply was short. "It ended the moment you treated our life like a transaction." 3 years later, I've built a quiet life with fewer variables. I now teach part-time at Everett Technical College, a course called Digital Defense and Ethical Systems. My students are bright, curious, and a little stunned when I tell them my first real case study was my own marriage. I never use names, I never dramatize, I just teach the truth, that systems protect what emotions sometimes overlook. I live alone now, in a one-bedroom condo overlooking Lake Union. There's no space for illusions, no closets filled with someone else's unfinished plans. My mornings are simple. Black coffee, market check, inbox sweep. On good days, I walk down to the water. No headphones, just thoughts. Occasionally, Sentinel still sends me alerts, mostly phishing attempts or minor breaches in freelance client accounts. But the big red flags, those are gone. The system holds. I kept the final letter Lena sent me from prison. It sits in a sealed envelope in my file cabinet, unopened, not out of spite, just clarity. Her words, whatever they are, won't change what happened. Some people find closure in forgiveness. I found mine in facts, in code, in watching justice function, not because I forced it to. I don't date much. I'm not bitter, just careful. Not everyone who smiles at you is building an escape plan, but you only need to be wrong once to learn. Betrayal taught me that. And here's what I tell my students when the semester ends. Love is beautiful, trust is powerful, but only systems endure. They always nod, some smile, some look away, but they remember. Because what happened to me wasn't just personal, it was a lesson, and now it's a legacy. This story teaches us that betrayal doesn't always arrive with warning signs. It often hides behind routine smiles and familiar habits, but preparation, not paranoia, is what saves you. Logan didn't seek revenge. He didn't collapse. He simply trusted the system he built, one designed to detect deception without emotion. In the end, it wasn't anger that brought justice. It was discipline, foresight, and an unshakable commitment to truth. Love can blind us, but systems, when built with integrity, don't lie. This is a reminder to protect not just your heart, but your future with structure, not just sentiment. Call to action. If this story moved you, inspired you, or made you think twice about trust and accountability, like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who needs to hear it. There's power in truth. Let's make sure more people know how to protect theirs.